Hi there. I'm Julie Beischel, and I serve as Director of Research at the Windbridge Research Center, where my co-author, husband, and partner in all things, Mark Bacuzzi, serves as Executive Director. Today I'll be talking about compassion and death anxiety in mediums. The results of this project are pretty straightforward, so I'm going to take the long way around and couch it from a wider viewpoint. We define mediumship as the experience of contact or communication with deceased individuals for the purpose of providing messages to their living loved ones. This phenomenon has been present in societies all over the world since time immemorial and serves the purpose of demonstrating a continuing bond between the living and the deceased that perseveres beyond physical death. I have been performing research with mediums since 2003. I work with a team of pre-screened mediums tested using a published peer-reviewed procedure. One advantage of mediumship research is that the population of interest is capable of reliably providing verifiable information acquired using psi under controlled conditions. My co-investigators and I are careful to ensure a respectful research environment and the ecological validity of the experimental protocols. This is for the purpose of pushing our understanding of the mediumship phenomenon and experience forward. But let's start at the beginning. As you may know, the purpose of science is to acquire new and usually generalizable knowledge. The first step of the scientific method is making observations. We can presently observe people called mediums reporting information about the deceased to living loved ones called sitters. This is where ecologically valid mediumship research starts. In natural mediumship readings, mediums provide identifying information about the departed so the sitters can recognize them and trust the medium's other messages. As such, modern researchers have specifically requested this type of information from mediums under research conditions. For example, we previously determined that there was no difference in the accuracy of the information reported by mediums under blinded conditions across the type of questions they were asked about the deceased. We asked about physical description, personality, hobbies, and cause of death. Makes sense. Your ability to hear someone communicate with you doesn't change based on what they're talking about. Moreover, a conservative 2x2 chi-square test of nearly 2,500 items reported by 20 pre-screened mediums under blinded conditions demonstrated that the hits to misses ratios were significantly different for target readings intended for the rater and decoy readings intended for someone else. The solid columns in this graph reflect the actual accuracy scores, and the dashed columns represent the mathematically expected values. Hits are dark blue, misses light blue, target readings on the left, decoy readings on the right. Blinded sitters scored more items as hits and less as misses in readings intended for them than would be statistically expected. Under blinded conditions, certain mediums can report accurate and specific information about deceased individuals, is the take-home message of this slide. In addition, a meta-analysis of 14 mediumship accuracy testing studies performed between 2001 and 2015 concluded that some mediums are able to acquire information about deceased persons through some unknown or anomalous means. And finally, the accuracy testing findings from studies I originally performed have now been replicated by an independent lab during 38 readings by 9 other mediums. This collection of research demonstrates that certain mediums can report accurate and specific information about the deceased under blinded conditions. Contemporary mediumship researchers have also examined mediums' experiences. In the modern reductionist materialist biomedical model, subjective experiences are not widely valued. However, for many phenomena like pain, depression, fatigue, and anger, researchers only have the reports of the person having the experience. Moreover, a lot of psi research is contingent on participant reports of their experiences. We can only ask participants to choose which image from several they dreamed of, remote viewed, or intuited. We can't directly observe which image appeared in their minds. Obviously, there are limitations to using reports of humans about their experiences, but it's still the best method we have. I have examined several aspects of mediums' experiences. The most interesting is that they know what regular psychic functioning feels like, and psychically communicating with the deceased feels different. It's the difference between reading a book and seeing a play, in one participant's words. Qualitative and quantitative phenomenological analyses have demonstrated this difference in mediums' experiences, and it holds even when the mediums are blinded to whether they are reading a living or a deceased target. When mediums provide accurate information about deceased people under blinded conditions, they subjectively experience significantly more love than when providing psychic information about the living. The accuracy testing data, taken together with the findings that pre-screened mediums under blinded and randomized conditions experience communication with the deceased differently than regular psychic functioning, provide, in my not at all humble opinion, the very best evidence for the survival of human consciousness after physical death. We have also examined other unique characteristics of mediums. For example, we learned that self-identified mediums, like a lot of people who do well on psi tests, scored significantly higher on a measure of the Big Five personality trait of agreeableness when compared to demographically identical self-identified non-mediums. Both groups were roughly 90% white females over 40. The prevalence of this trait means mediums may be open to and even eager to help researchers and may end up participating in studies with low ecological validity. This often allows for public critiques of the resulting data that are based in fear, ignorance, and/or dogma. These types of studies and the resulting critiques can hamper support for and thus progress in this field. Just because a study utilizes participants who identify as mediums, that does not necessarily make it a mediumship study. Researchers may wish to keep in mind that, generally speaking, mediumship does not involve reporting information about people pictured in photographs, acquiring content about technological advances, or providing information about distant locations, the future, or upcoming winning lottery numbers. Mediumship readings are intimate connections between people who love each other. It's difficult to bring that into the sterile environment of a laboratory, but it can be done, and done respectfully. Moreover, mediums capable of making these connections require years, if not decades, to hone their abilities, learning how to interpret symbolism, manage the energy required to perform readings, and cope in a society that overall does not respect or understand what they feel called to do. Researchers may wish to work exclusively with established mediums who have been pre-screened using a protocol that is transparent and that demonstrates their abilities under controlled conditions. In the future, researchers may ideally wish to keep in mind mediums' potential predilection for agreeableness and be responsible for mimicking the purpose and practices of real-world mediums while examining the characteristics of this unique population. What makes mediums different from non-mediums? For example, the current project, I told you we'd get there, focused on compassion and death anxiety. Compassion is the wish that beings, including self, do not suffer, a sensitivity to suffering when they do, and a commitment to trying to prevent and alleviate suffering. Compassion is related to, but different from empathy, which is experiencing the suffering of others, but does not include actually helping. Compassion is empathy plus actually doing something. Compassion is good for minds, bodies, and society. The global contemplative traditions have recognized the importance of developing compassion for thousands of years. Physician, author, and good friend of myself and the SSE, Larry Dossey, has noted that, quote, throughout history, the fear of death has caused more suffering than all the physical diseases combined. This fear of death or death anxiety is common across all societies, but can have substantial negative effects in our daily lives. In general, our innate fear of annihilation causes us to try to defend our own significance or value and the worldviews with which we identify. On a social level, death anxiety can make people want to push their worldviews on others, leading to nationalism, conflicts between groups, and an increase in greed and consumerism. Fearing death also makes grief more severe when a loved one dies. Conversely, recognizing that death is a natural and integral part of life and having what's called a neutral acceptance of death has been shown to be closely related to living a meaningful life as well as lessening grief. The current two studies compared compassion and death anxiety in mediums and non-mediums who were demographically and statistically identical in gender, age, and race. The participants in this population were primarily white females in their 50s. Two online surveys were used to compare the mediums and non-mediums characteristics. The first study examined differences in compassion using anonymous survey responses to the Santa Clara Brief Compassion Scale from 316 self-identified mediums and 1,068 self-identified non-mediums. The SCBCS is comprised of 5 items with response options from 1, not at all true of me, to 7, very true of me. The second study used the corrected Collett-Lester fear of death scale to quantify death anxiety in 120 mediums, which included 14 Windbridge Certified Research Mediums and 226 non-mediums. This instrument gauges individual components of death anxiety and uses 4 7-item subscales: your own death, the death of others, your own dying, and the dying of others, with response options from 1, not, to 5, very. Data groups were compared using t-tests. Significance was Bonferroni-corrected. Regarding compassion, the 316 mediums received significantly, p to the negative 14, higher scores on the Santa Clara Brief Compassion Scale, with a mean score of 6.24 than the 1,068 non-mediums who scored 5.74. The difference had a moderate effect size, G, of 0.43. That is, mediums report having significantly higher levels of compassion than even demographically identical non-mediums. The 120 mediums in the second study received significantly lower Collett-Lester fear of death scale scores than the 226 non-mediums, with p-values all less than 0.00001, far below the Bonferroni-corrected alpha of 0.01. Moreover, the analyses showed moderate effect sizes for the subscales of your own death and your own dying, and large effect sizes for the subscales, the death of others and the dying of others. In general, it seems like mediums are not scared of any aspect of death, theirs or others. Compared to demographically identical non-mediums, mediums demonstrated significantly higher levels of compassion and significantly lower levels of death anxiety. How are these socially useful research findings? Well, engaging in practices that develop compassion may help non-mediums connect with their departed loved ones, thus strengthening their continuing bonds and lessening grief. Beyond after-death communication, death anxiety can be addressed by, for example, enhancing self-esteem and practicing gratitude. Both of these findings may also have implications in healthcare. Basically, being as connected to a greater spiritual reality as mediums are might be beneficial to any one of us. I would like to thank my co-researcher, Mark Bacuzzi, and together we would like to thank all of the medium and non-medium participants who participated in these studies, and you for your attention. Thank you.